All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Couple of housekeeping items. Closed captioning can be enabled on an individual basis, and everyone has control of their own view in the top right-hand corner of the screen. So good afternoon and welcome to the final session of Performance Management Month. My name is Mika Owens-Jones, and I am the Detailed Performance Management Program Manager with the Office of Human Resources at HHS. Jason Love will be assisting us through this session. Joining me today for the feedback dilemma, asking and receiving, is Dr. Patrick Malone. Patrick is the director of the Key Executive Leadership Program at American University. He is a frequent guest lecturer on kindness, gratitude, emotional intelligence, compassion, ethics, and mindfulness. He lectures on leadership across federal agencies, organizations, professional organization associations, and universities, including the Fulbright Scholars Program. He is one of the few researchers in the country certified on subject-object methodology developed at Harvard. Dr. Malone served 22 years in the Navy and retired as a captain. His TED Talk, Thinking About Time, is available on the TED Talk website, and his co-author book, Leading with Love and Laughter, Letting Go and Getting Real at Work, was released in the spring of 2021. His most recent book, Emotional Intelligence in Talent Development, was released in October 2021. Please welcome Dr. Patrick Malone.
Thank you so much, Mika. And I want to say thank you to Jason as well. We had the greatest chat before we got started today when we realized we're all Dallas Cowboy fans, which is just so great. And I hope all of you are Cowboy fans that are on the line with us today. It is a pleasure to be here. And I just want to say thank you for the invitation, and really excited to kind of get started and talk a little bit about this topic of the feedback dilemma. In terms of just kind of our time together today, everyone, I'm going to be monitoring the chat, so please don't hesitate to jump in with questions or comments throughout. I usually don't reserve like 20 minutes at the end for questions, because it's like really embarrassing when people don't ask questions. I'm like, oh no, this was just horrible. So I just like to do it all the way through. So by all means, throw it out there on the chat. If for some reason I miss it, Mika will be watching, and Jason as well, and I'll try to, and you can always reach at me and say, hey, Goober, you didn't answer my question. I'm like, oh, sorry, and I'll answer the question. So it'll all be good. This is a fascinating topic. I think the idea of feedback and asking and receiving, and it's difficult for us to kind of ask for what we want, right? And it's difficult for us to hear what we don't want to hear. And it's also difficult for us to, I think, to deliver honest and appropriate feedback. And when I was preparing for this, I kept thinking, wow, I'm doing all of this completely wrong. I mean, just when I look at what I do, because I have a wonderful associate director, and every year I'm like, you're great. I mean, but I know I should be giving her more feedback and real constructive feedback. So what we're going to do in the next little bit of time that we have together is we're going to talk about what feedback really is. And really I'm really a big fan of kind of the neurological side of the way the brain works whenever we're either giving or receiving feedback. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some of the research on what feedback does to us, how we react when we have to provide or when we receive it, some of the root causes of those issues, especially at the neurological level. And I'm going to present a model for you that was developed by a guy named David Rock. Now, let me just say, that's a great name. If my name was David Rock, we'd have 20,000 people on this line, because can you imagine? Meek would be like, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. David Rock. And you'd be like, yeah, what a cool guy. Instead, you got Patrick Malone. It doesn't flow. But David Rock is a cognitive neuroscientist that has done a really nice amount of work on this topic. And I'm a big fan of his SCARF model. This is a very simple and easy to understand model that is so beneficial for us when we're giving and receiving feedback. But frankly, it's beneficial for us just in terms of how we communicate and care for one another as human beings. So we'll talk about the SCARF model, and then I'll wrap up by talking about some of the things that we need to think about when we're providing feedback, when we are actually giving it, and some of the things to think about when we're on the receiving end that will make it. So we're going to look at both sides of this dilemma called feedback. I always tinker with slides. And so, and certainly in this particular case, there was absolutely no, I did that like right before you all were here. I was changing slides all over the place. And so I was looking at the title. I thought, you know what, I'm not so sure that the slides are really, I'm not sure this is the right title. This is the right title, right? No, your slides have not changed yet. I've left it so far for who's asking for that. So, Alejandra, no, not yet. But I always like to look at the titles. I'm like, okay, well, a feedback dilemma, asking and receiving. This is pretty good. In fact, I emailed Mika a couple of days ago. I said, hey, we're still doing this title, right? This is kind of our thing. This is the approach we're taking. She said, yes, absolutely. I said, it sounds good. But I wasn't comfortable. So I changed it to leadership and feedback. And I thought, okay, that's probably, leadership and feedback. It's straightforward. Then I thought, feedback, appraisals, and evaluations. Do I have to? That's pretty good, right? Do I have to? And then I thought, well, no, actually, what about Is It Me? That's a good title. And then I thought, no, It's You. That's a better title. And then I thought, no, we'll just go back to the original title, which is what we have. So feedback dilemma, asking and receiving. That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's kind of get into this. One of the questions I think that we have to answer before we even get into the topic is why. Why does it matter that we're even talking about this? And for that matter, why does it matter that Mika has put together this amazing series of that you all have been attending over the last many weeks? Why does it matter? And the reason why it matters is because the people that we lead deserve more. I mean, the fact is the people that we lead deserve more. I'm sorry, I'm taking off the share for just a moment because I want to reshare and make sure I shared sound because I've got a video clip for you here in a moment. There we go. Yeah, the people that we lead deserve more. I mean, that's just a fact. And we know for sure that the people that we lead, the people that we communicate with, the people that we care about, and I'm not talking everybody about just work, because keep in mind that feedback and human dynamics back and forth with one another is not just about the time that we spend in the workplace. It's about our relationships with the people we love. It's about our relationships with the people in our communities and the people that we don't like so much, and the people that we see at the grocery store, and the people that we see at church, and the people that we, live with day in and day out. So this idea of communication and it really applies to everybody. It applies not only to supervisors, but to staff. We're all providing feedback, whether we're working for someone or not. So this is important for us. And the people in this community, the people that I'm talking about here, are crazy stressed. So the latest data on stress suggests that about 83% of Americans are extremely stressed. So the people that we need to communicate with are wicked, crazy stressed. I mean, yeah, technically, I suppose we're probably coming out of COVID, so to speak, even though there's going to be more strains, it's going to be with us forever. But it's really changed the way we look at life. And there's a lot of uncertainty. Many of you are facing the challenges of am I going to be going back in the office? What's my hybrid work schedule going to be looking like? This is all uncertainty. We're not wired for uncertainty. So it's a challenge. We're all afraid. By the way, the Chapman University Fear Index every year puts out a fear index guide that says exactly what it is that Americans are afraid of. I don't know if anyone has a guess, and I'm going to ask you to just throw this out there into this chat for me. What do you all think the number one thing Americans are afraid of right now? Anybody, just throw in there. Thank you, Deborah. Public speaking is always a good one. What do you think Americans are afraid of the most? Having jobs, job loss, inflation, job security, economy, uncertainty, recession. I see them all showing. This is great. When you've got hundreds of people in the room, you get a lot of good feedback, and I'm seeing it as it all comes in. This is super wonderful. I saw one just come in here that said health. I'm glad to see that one. Here is the number one thing that Americans are afraid of right now, and what Americans have been afraid of for the last 5 years. The number one fear that Americans have is corrupt government. Corrupt government. It's been the number one fear for the last 5 years. Mitchell, yeah, politicians, closely related to this. Number two fear that Americans have as of this year is civil unrest. Of the remaining 8 fears in the top 10, 5 of them are related to healthcare. And it looked like that even before COVID. So we are a nation that's got a lot on our mind. We've got a lot of things to be concerned about. And so We're a fearful nation. We're also a lonely nation. It's the people that we're talking about here that we're talking about feedback with, they're lonely. I mean, so this is a staggering number. So 61% of our nation reports being lonely some or all of the time, which means that pretty much every other person on this session with us has reported being lonely, either some or all of the time. And for the record, everyone, and this is a very important takeaway, the younger generations are the lonelier generations. The Gen Zs and the millennials are by far the lonelier generations, as opposed to the Xers and the boomers and the traditionalists. And those in the younger generations that use social media heavily are more lonely than those who don't. So this is the environment that we're dealing with when we're thinking of how we're going to communicate with one another and provide feedback to one another. This is the environment. A lot of the folks that we work with are disengaged. A lot of them are leaving. We know for sure that the Great Resignation is real. People are rethinking what they want in the workplace, which means they're rethinking how they want to be guided and how they want to receive feedback and how they want to do this. This is extremely interesting. By the way, Alexandra, the data for the fear list is the Chapman University Fear Index. So that's where that data came from. You can look up the last several years. Please look that up. It's a great piece of work that comes out of there every year. But this is what people are doing, everyone. And I don't want to belabor the Great Resignation. There's a lot of argument about whether it's really real. It's real. It's definitely real, even if people are just changing jobs. But if you've tried to book time in a state park or buy an RV or buy a boat, or, people are rethinking their lives. They're rethinking how they want to be treated in the world. And they're demanding these kind of things. They're demanding development, trust, respect. And look at this list. Not one thing on this list is a technical skill, right? Development, a little bit, like maybe I want to learn some new parts of the work that I do, but I also want personal development. I also want to build my emotional intelligence skills. I want to be a more open and diverse thinker. I want to expand my thinking capacity. All of the things that people are demanding in our workforce and in our lives right now are tied to these very human and very soft and very essential skills. This is where we are today. So with that as the backdrop, let's talk about feedback. By the way, I probably should have warned you all, I like humor. Humor does a lot of good things for us. When we laugh, we tend to be more open and more accepting. It brings us together in a very real and human way. So there will be a couple of other little videos I'm going to show you later on that are meant to be, entertaining, but also that have really good things for us to kind of pick up on. Obviously, in this case, this kind of feedback, don't get defensive on me, formal warning. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that's wrong with this. So I can't help doing this because I am a professor and I like to test people. So I'm going to give you all a test. Oh, Jerry, thank you. I'm writing that down. Jerry just wrote The Blind Side. So Jerry, I'm guessing there's something in there that I should use, and I will definitely look at that. That's a great movie. So I do have a test for you, and I need you all to answer these questions honestly. So please take out something to write on. There are only 5 questions, and you're going to get to select these, and then I'm going to ask you to report your score for me. So let's go with this. So our first question on this test, number 1, you're considering getting feedback on work you've produced. How likely are you to expect that any feedback will be negative? A, I usually expect to get good feedback because I'm pretty competent. B, I'm nervous about a negative response, but not paralyzed. C, I assume that feedback will be negative. Okay. I can tell you right now where I fall on that one. I am definitely a C. When my boss calls me, I panic because I know I've done something wrong. Like what? Oh my gosh, the dean needs me. Okay, I'm seeing all great answers come in here. Thank you. Please keep track of your answers because I'm going to give you the scoring later. Who said 1C2? That was a complicated answer. I saw that coming into the chat. That was good. Okay, very good. Let's go to the next question. When your boss points out 9 good things, but 1 valid area where you could improve, what's your reaction? A, I plan some simple actions that will ensure continuing good feedback. B, I feel happy that the feedback was positive overall, but the negative comment irks me a little. C, the 1 negative comment bugs me for several days or more. Okay, good. Nice group coming in here. Please keep track of your scores. Once again, I'm all about vulnerability and transparency. So I'm going to tell you, for me, I'm just a mess. It's always C. And when you all do your evaluations, as Mika's going to ask you to do at the end of this, and then Mika's going to hopefully send me the evaluation and say, Patrick, this is how you did. And hopefully most of them will be positive. But the one person that says, my gosh, this was such a waste of this time. Who's this bozo that Mika found to come in? That's the one that I'm going to think about for the next month. And I'll be like, what did I do? Why was I so terrible? So I understand if you're in the C category with me, I got you. Let's go to question number 3. How confident are you in your ability to cope with negative feedback? A, I can make necessary adjustments. B, I'd ruminate for a while, but I'd get through it after a quiet night with a glass of wine and a Netflix marathon. By the way, season 6, Peaky Blinders, not quite there yet. We rewatched it, but that's our Netflix thing right now. And then, and plus that's Ireland for me, it's close. So C, I think I'm so embarrassed. I find it difficult if the feedback, if I ever saw that person again. So once again, A, B, C, here we are. For me, I'm into the B thing for this. I'd ruminate for a while. I wouldn't be that embarrassed, but maybe a little bit. So maybe B.5. Okay, question number 4. How prone to personalizing negative feedback are you? Gosh, I forgot how hard this test was. I'm terrible at this. A, I don't tend to do it. B, I personalize it, but I've got enough self-awareness that I catch myself. Or C, when I get it, it feels that the person doesn't like me and that doesn't like the work I've done. And once again, I'm kind of in the middle between B and C. I really personalized it. It's horrible. I've got to get better. I should listen to myself more often. Number 5, how likely are you to avoid getting feedback on work you produced? A, I don't avoid it. I see it as useful. B, I avoid it in some, but not all areas. And C, I get feedback only if I have to. I'd rather go to the dentist. So another great answer. By the way, I saw another Peaky Blinders comment come in there. Thank you. That was great. So here it is. So for me, I actually believe for me, it's A. I don't avoid it. I really do see it as useful, even though it paralyzes me sometimes. So here's where we are. Now, in terms of your scores, here's what we want to know. And Mila, I see you're mostly A's, Mila. So that's great. I see where you are on this. Here's where you fall. If you got mostly A's, you generally think of feedback as pretty helpful and you're not threatened. I mean, look, this is the place we want to be. This is the place. This is our goal. This is where we'd all love to be. And mostly B's, you're a bit prone to expecting that it's going to be negative. If you've got 3 B's out of 5, you're probably in that category. And then C, it's pretty anxiety producing for you. Now, I can't see all of the answers at one time here. And frankly, I'm not good enough with polls on Zoom to be able to make this really fancy. But I think that the majority of us are probably going to be in that B range, either tending toward C or tending toward A. It's going to be right there somewhere in the middle. But this is for us. Remember, we may be in the position of giving feedback. And once again, and please understand, feedback isn't about a supervisor-subordinate relationship necessarily. It could be a colleague-to-colleague relationship, which can be even more difficult to give. So this can be a colleague-to-colleague thing as well. We're constantly giving feedback. So this is kind of where we fall, just a fun little test to kind of get us started. I was hoping you all would like it. Here's what I would like to do. I would like to kind of propose a little scenario for you. So see if this sounds familiar. So we're going to call this person Connor. Connor sees themselves as a pretty good manager. And whenever one of their employees struggles with an assignment, Connor swoops in to help them put things in order and offer helpful pointers. Sounds pretty good so far, right? Connor sounds pretty cool. Works with people, helps with them, helps with pointers and so forth. So Connor's agency decides to introduce a 360 evaluation. And as a manager, Connor's pretty psyched about this because Connor thinks that, you know what, this is good. I always ask for feedback. I'm constantly talking with my team. And Connor thinks that this is a good thing, this 360 thing, because it's going to open up the team members to be able to be honest with one another and all the good things that 360s do. However, what happens is the following. Connor gets the feedback and is surprised to find some people feel they need to let go and allow people to work out their assignments in their own way. One person even uses the term micromanaging. So even though Connor is supposed to be setting an example, the reaction that Connor has is defensiveness. and anger and hurt. In fact, Connor usually sets aside time to help their employees solve problems and really has now just kind of received criticism because the employees aren't being given the freedom to kind of make decisions and move forward. So Connor feels betrayed and defensive. I want to tell you all something that happened in the IG community a number of years ago, and this story is absolutely classic. It's a legend. And it happened in the Tennessee Valley Authority. And the inspector general for the TVA did a 360 evaluation. And this particular person happened to be a guy, asked for evaluation of his work with his, and he was the IG, so he was the head person. And the feedback that he got was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. So this inspector general called in all hands, went up in front of the microphone and said the following. The IG said, "Everyone, you provided feedback to me, and I want to thank you for that. And what I've learned from reading your feedback is that I have a lot of work to do. Let me read to you what you all said about me." And this person read every single negative comment out loud, and some of them were very unkind, that was directed at him while he was the IG. Now, that's an extreme example, but I mean, to the bravery, and I'll tell you what happened in the TVA after this. This person became one of the most beloved bosses ever. And one of the reasons why is because of their willingness to accept the feedback that they receive. But it's not easy to do. And in fact, I've got several of these group shares. I want to start with this first one. What is it that you fear, if you fear giving or receiving feedback, or if you're concerned about it, what is it specifically about it that you fear? I'd like to see what we get in the chat here. Is it about your performance? Is it that you'll take it personally? What is it? I see some here. What's going on? So let's see. Someone's perception. Thank you, Jenny. That's great. Getting fired. Great. Katrina, I see perception as well. Thank you. No fear. Good. That's good perception. Love Paula's answer. Bias. Oh, that's an excellent one. We're all carrying the biases. The authenticity. This is good. Thank you. Defensiveness, being defensive. That's very honest. Thank you for that. Let's see, a lot of good ones coming in here. Being misunderstood. Don't have the knowledge to give the feedback. Oh, that's a great one as well. Thank you. Worried about reputation, not being validated. Confirming my own fears about my weaknesses. Victoria, that's fantastic. That's a really good one. That's one of the scariest things that we can do. Let's see what else is coming in here. Really good one. Abrasiveness. Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, we're kind of in a world of rude behavior, sadly. So this is good. Okay. Feeling incompetent. Yeah, that's a really good one. Jamie, that really speaks to the personal nature of feedback, the emotions. Thank you. I see that one as well. The appropriate tone. Thanks, Janelle. That's a great one as well. No, these are perfect. Thank you. You know, this is one of the things about feedback. I mean, I think all of us to some degree have a little bit of fear about it. And, you know, it's just, frankly, it's just really, really hard. I mean, think about this. The word performance review, the phrase performance review, is one of those things that kind of makes our hearts sink a little bit. It's like we dread, I mean, we're talking about formal evaluations now, formal feedback, this ritual that we've institutionalized over the year, and then it's done, and then you wait a year. You're not supposed to wait a year. We're supposed to be getting feedback more often, but it never happens. Reba, I love that. Reba just said, makes me sick. I just think that's fantastic. It is. It's very, very hard. No wonder this formalized, institutionalized process doesn't work well. It's the wrong emotional environment in which to discuss performance. It's a shame because giving and providing feedback is very important. And when done the right way, with the right intentions, feedback communication is the avenue to performance. It's the avenue to mission accomplishment, but it's a skill. And like all skills, it takes practice. I'd like you to take this away. Remember, all of us, even the toughest among us, are tender at heart. We are. We're tender at heart. We're human beings. We all want to be loved. We all want to be admired. We all want to be respected. We all want to feel a sense of efficacy in the work that we do. In other words, we want to feel like what we do makes a difference. We want to feel that what we do matters. And one of the generational aspects of feedback is that the younger generations do need to know how what they do contributes to the mission. So a little sidetrack, a number of years ago, I was able to speak to the Chief Human Capital Officer Council, the CHICO Council. And they called me and they said, Patrick, why don't you come talk to us about millennials back before Z's were in the workplace? They're a mess. We don't know what to do with them. Tell us about millennials. How can we? And I never got invited back. And here's why, because I basically said, look, this is your fault. And it was their fault. And the reason it was their fault is because they weren't providing the feedback to the younger generation, the newer workers, to help them understand how what they did contributed to the overall mission of the organization. More than any other generation in our history, millennials and Zs have to know, they want to know. It drives them to know how what they do in their cubicle, in their home remotely, whatever it happens to be, they need to know how that connects with the mission. That's feedback. They need to see that. And if they don't get it, it's probably because we as supervisors, as bosses, as senior individuals, probably haven't given them the time and talked to them and helped them understand it. So I said to the Chicos, it's your fault. You're not doing it. You can't blame them. I mean, I got blamed for everything in the 60s, right? It wasn't all my fault. It was, it's the 60s, right? But for crying out loud, you can't blame those folks because they're still learning. They're brand new. And so it's so important. And yeah, I think I don't know who made this comment about that's everyone, not just millennials. Absolutely true. This is true. All of us need to understand. The FEVS scores, frankly, last year were pretty good in this regard in terms of connection and mission. But generationally, I think we still have a couple of challenges. So yeah, it's very hard. And the other thing that connects to or contributes to our fear are the thinking patterns that we all have. And this is the neuroscience that I mentioned that I want to make sure that we talk about a little bit. When we have a thought in our brain, what happens is that two neurons connect with each other and they fire together, they wire together, and then we have the thought. If we have this thought over and over again, then, so we were talking about football before, so my thought is the Washington Commanders are going to be 0-16 this season, right? So that's my thought. If I have that thought over and over again, I form what's called a neuronet, which is a little bit more established thought pattern. And if I have that thought over and over and over again for many, many years, such as thoughts that I have from my childhood, perhaps biases that I learned from relatives in my childhood, things they said about other groups of people that I heard for years and years and years. And it forms this thing that's called a neural pathway. And this neural pathway is a very established, like a rutted road in our brain, the one we fall into. Remember, the brain is the most important organ in the body, but it's also the one that's really geared towards survival. So this horizontal thought, these neural pathways that we fall into are mainly there for survival reasons. They allow us to react quickly, and that can be good, but it can be bad. If we have the same thought over and over again, performance appraisals are bad. I'm really afraid of this. I don't know how to give feedback. I don't want to get feedback. We think that way over and over again. It becomes our default way of seeing the world. And it becomes a fight or flight thing. It becomes an all or nothing kind of a thing for us as thinkers. And it can be really, really a challenge. And it leads to what we call negativity bias. So scientists, psychologists, and neurobiologists tell us that our brains, and we've known this for years, that our brains are hardwired to react to negative stimuli faster. Think about that for a minute. We are wired to react to negative stimuli faster. So when I am getting feedback from my boss, from my dean, and Vicki is saying, Patrick, you could be doing this better, I am going to react negatively immediately because that's what the brain has been taught to do. It's called the negativity bias. And what we found is that this was originally something that was important for survival because we could sense an attack and that would trigger our fight or flight mode. That would increase the amount of hormones that are released into our bloodstream. That elevates reaction time. By the way, welcome to Biology 101. That elevates our reaction time. It heightens our emotions, all of those things that are necessary for survival. And the experiences that trigger these reactions become etched into our brain so that we can react to them quickly. This is why we tend to remember negative experiences more than positive ones. We do. We tend to remember not always accurately, but we tend to remember negative experiences more than positive ones. Now, in an office setting, that negativity bias can actually work against us. Even when we're receiving mostly positive feedback, it tends to be the constructive feedback or the criticism that we recall most acutely. This applies whether you're the giver or the receiver. So remember, if you're providing feedback to a colleague, to a subordinate, even to your boss, by the way, we can do that. It is allowed for us to provide feedback to our bosses. Then it's going to be the constructive stuff, the thing you might want to work on stuff that is going to be the one that typically is hung on and thought about, and people react to it more quickly. It's not a physical attack, but it is an emotional attack, at least the way that our brain sees it. And this is too bad because, I mean, once again, this is the way we're wired. It's really too bad because healthy communication is really important. It's pretty critical in the workplace to have healthy communication, and it can be constructive criticism, it can be casual conversation, it can be emails, but good communication matters. The problem is that one of the most difficult types of communication is feedback. So employers and managers, we either approach it too delicately or we approach it with not enough tact. Meanwhile, we've got employees who are nervous. I mean, all of these things are crucial. And by the way, thank you for the comment, Erica, on trust. Trust is the lubricant for the organization. Without it, nothing works. I mean, we may still accomplish our mission. We may still have some success, but without trust, this doesn't work. It's complicated, and feedback is complicated because look, we're not dealing with supervisor to a PD. It's not like I'm reading a PD and providing feedback to that arbitrary piece of paper in my hand that's got a list of duties. I'm not doing that. I'm providing this feedback to a human being who has their own human being things in their life, not just work, but their families and their friends and COVID and they spilled coffee on their lap coming in the morning and they've got to pay a bill they can't afford and they're taking care of an elderly parent or their uncle just got out of jail or whatever it happens to be. I mean, we're human beings first, way before the PDs that we use in the workplace. So the challenge of feedback is important. And as I said, it's extremely complex whenever we're talking about interactions between two human beings. Let me show you another video here, and I think this will give you a really good idea of what I mean.
So that was my weekend, nothing special. What about you? You seem rather chipper for a Monday.
Today is a good day. It's my performance review.
Wait a minute. You're excited about the performance review?
My next meeting is a one-on-one. I have to deliver a performance review.
That's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's with Matt.
Oh, I can see why you're so depressed.
Man, I'm stoked about this one. Because last time Melanie gave me kind of a bad review.
Last time I gave him an extremely negative review.
What exactly did she say?
Mumbo-jumbo manager speak.
I couldn't have been more clear.
Like needing a little touch-up here and there.
His appearance was sloppy, he was passive and unmotivated.
Maybe learn some more stuff.
And the quality of his work was completely substandard.
And we talked about my future.
I also said that I didn't see much of a future for him.
Dude, you have to read between the lines, but she was majorly hinting that I could go places.
I don't think he's gonna make it to the end of the year anyway.
With a little spit and polish? No big deal. So that's what I did. Got myself some spit and polish. Buddy, you're looking at Mr. Improved.
If anything, he's gotten worse. I don't know which is more objectionable, his social deficiencies or his technical incompetencies.
I mean, I busted my hump this last year. I even took some night classes at the community college.
I can see why you're so enthused about things.
It's more than that. I think I'll finally get that promotion I deserve. And believe me, with a new baby on the way, I could use all the cash I could get.
I'm putting Matt on probation. And that means no yearly bonus, but fortunately I hear his wife has a good job.
Especially with my wife losing her job and all.
Sorry to hear about that, mate. Tell you what, you give me a call after the review and we'll celebrate over lunch or something.
Yay.
Okay.
Cheerio.
Well, call me for lunch later. I have a feeling you're gonna need to take a break.
Well, Matt, are you ready?
You bet. Now, I'm jumping the gun a little bit here, I know. And maybe it's just nerves because my wife lost her job and all. But you'll see I deserve that promotion.
Promotion?
Yes. And I have you to thank. You know that little pep talk last time? And with being a new daddy and all. Anyway, I'm just so excited to hear what you have to say.
I'm sorry. I really like that video. I thought that was pretty good. Look, I've seen some comments as we were going through this video, and someone said something about being on different planes. Yeah, I mean, these are two different conversations, two completely different perspectives, and they're not going to meet in the middle, right? So what is going to happen here? And Catherine, I see you wrote ROFL. Can I be honest? I didn't know what that meant. We were presenting at Work Human in Atlanta last month, and we were at a bar, don't judge me, and there was a big plastic cup, and it had all these things on it, like AKA and ROFL. I had to text one of our daughters to ask them what ROFL meant. So now I know it means rolling on the floor laughing. Yes, good. So yeah, this video I thought was pretty telling, because we've got two different conversations, and you can see where when they meet, it's just not going to be a good thing. A couple of the comments that I saw in the chat so far had to do with, well, why aren't we doing this? And there were comments about fear and trust. When I was in the Navy, I retired from the Navy as a captain. So I was a pretty senior person. And I used to always ask my enlisted staff and junior folks to call me by my first name. And it got me in trouble with the senior enlisted, because they were like, you can't do that, Captain. It's not appropriate. It's not military protocol, blah, blah, blah. But one of the real things I found that was a struggle for me while I was in the military, I was on the medical side, was the fact that I walked around with a rank on my collar, or with, shoulder boards. And it's just like, you're carrying your status, you're carrying your influence. And we do this in all organizations, whether we're wearing a uniform or not. But one of the things that always struck me is as a barrier to feedback, as a barrier to open, honest conversation, was the fact that I am just showing you by virtue of everything I'm wearing, look at me. And it made me, I struggled with that a lot, because I didn't want people to respond to me because I was the captain. I wanted them to respond to me because they were part of the same team, and we were trying to accomplish the same mission, which means sometimes you got to tell the captain they're wrong. And I think for me, at least personally, the position that I hold as the director of the KEY program, I am extremely blessed that I've got a group, my associate director, Sophie Dilby, and my assistant director, Jennifer, and our business office director, Bonnie. I've got a team that will call me out all the time. And they're like, Patrick, Patrick, you go sit over there, and we've got this going on. And I trust them completely. And they know what my strengths are, and they know my many weaknesses as well. And when we can create trusting environments, I'm going to use the word loving. When we can create loving, trusting, kind environments in the workplace, this is when feedback all of a sudden doesn't become a problem anymore. And it's really true. It doesn't become a problem anymore. So I think, but one of the questions, I'm sorry for the sidetrack, one of the things I want to mention was that I think we have to ask ourselves, do we even want it? I think, yeah, we want it, but we don't really want to hear it, not really, but we know we need it. Let me show you a few numbers here. So according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, some research that they've done over recent years, 60% of us would like to have feedback on a weekly or daily basis. We need that. I mean, this is, we want this as human beings. We want to, as I mentioned, we want to feel belonging. We want to feel like we can connect. So definitely makes sense. However, less than 75% of it, if we're under the age of 30, I'm sorry, if we're under the age of 30, the number of people who are looking for feedback on a daily or weekly basis jumps to almost 75%. So 3/4 of our younger generations need and want feedback. Generally, about 60% of the population does. But the younger generations, as I mentioned before, definitely want more. And 45% of our workforce value feedback from their peers, from their colleagues, from their customers. So it's not always the one way down from the boss kind of thing. So we really do. I think, a lot of us really do want this feedback, certainly over half, definitely want the feedback. But only 30%, actually less than 30%, say that they receive feedback on a regular basis. Remember, I talked a bit ago about the whole thing about the performance evaluation, the annual review process. And I'm doing mine right now for my associate director. And I just like, well, I mean, she's unbelievable. She's great, but we have regular conversations about her performance and mine. What are you doing? What am I doing? Should I be doing this better? Should you be doing this better? I mean, these are conversations we have all the time. The FEVS, I know that, there's a lot of folks that have different feelings about the FEVS scores and the use of these FEVS scores in various agencies, but I thought it would be worth calling your attention to some of the more interesting findings from last year's data. So for this particular question, in my work unit, steps are taken to deal with a poor performer who cannot or will not improve. Only 42% of the workforce agreed with that statement. So less than half of us think that poor performers are getting dealt with. And by the way, poor performers are not necessarily younger performers. They could be that old codgy dude in the corner that's been around forever, that's retired on active duty and not really contributing to the agency anymore. So, but this is something I really want to call this to your attention, because if you are a supervisor and you are not holding people accountable for performance, and believe me, I've fired people in the federal government too. I know how hard it can be. I understand that, but we have a moral imperative to make sure that poor performers are not sticking around government using federal funds to do no work because we have a citizenry to serve. This is a disturbing number. So this is tied to feedback as well. In my work unit, differences in performance are recognized in a meaningful way. Only half of the people think that performance is recognized, which once again ties to feedback. My question is, well, is there feedback going on here? Is there feedback occurring that is allowing performance to improve? Now, there's much beyond that. It's more than just the feedback. There's monitoring and development and training and all those things that need to occur as well. So we have to take these comments in a greater context. How satisfied are you with the recognition? This isn't necessarily just feedback, but I thought it was pretty important. And only about 57% of us in government feel like we are satisfied with the recognition. I was in a class one time and I had a physician kind of challenge me on this. They were very unhappy because they thought I was asking them to spend a whole lot of time talking to their staff. And this person said, Patrick, I don't have 15 minutes to talk to you about your cat every day. And I said, well, that's offensive. I'm a dog guy. So I didn't like that, but I said, that's not what I'm asking. And I don't think that recognition for what you receive or feedback has to be a formal sit down, go to lunch, write stuff down, record it for the record kind of a thing. Feedback can be a very informal. It can be a smile at the right time. It can be a nod. It can be a thank you at the right time. I'm not trying to use myself as a good example here because I'm not the best example of this, but I did something this morning that I think was a good example of this. So I thought I would share. I was talking with our chief financial officer at the university, and we were talking about a completely different matter. And I asked her, I said, by the way, does Sheila work for you? And she said, she does. And I said, let me just tell you, I said, Sheila has helped me with a lot of reimbursement stuff in the last couple of months. And I'm really bad with numbers. And Sheila has been so patient and so kind with me. And I just wanted to say, thank you. You're her boss. I want you to know. You know what? That's feedback. And the boss said, do you mind if I tell Sheila this? And I said, oh, please do. I already have, but I think it would mean a lot coming from you. These are the 5, 7, 8, 12-second things that we can do daily, whether it be subordinate to supervisor or vice versa, or colleague to colleague, where we provide feedback, and it's easy and quick and it builds camaraderie. When we receive criticism, though, it can be very dangerous. I mentioned this thing as a threat. And I want to go back to this because this is what I think is the biggest thing that we have to deal with this. And that is whenever we receive criticism, we're going to feel a lot of emotions. It hits us at that survival level, as I described, and we feel a lot of things. I mean, we could feel anger. We may end up acting out. We can feel fear. So we kind of deny, we procrastinate, or we get defensive. The tension, the jealousy of other people within the organization, self-sabotage. This is where I just decide, you know what, I don't care anymore. And then I say something really stupid to my boss that I shouldn't say. And then that's held against me forever. And it's a really bad thing. And this is where I want to kind of bring this mind thing in. So we've talked a bit about kind of the neuro part, some of the fears about feedback. And I think the point that I've been trying to make is it really is about the connection that we make with one another and how we build that. And I wanted to make sure that we spend a little bit of time. This is that David Rock model I told you about. here's what this says. And this is, I think this is one of the most important psychometric models created in recent history. It's not old. It's only a few years old. David has done a lot of really neat work with this. But here's what David suggests. He says that our mind works in one of two ways. We either react to someone in a toward way, like with a reward or a response, or we react in a negative way, away from the response or away from a threat. And this can play out in many ways, but this is the argument that he makes about the way the brain works. So we're not even talking right now just about feedback. We're talking about any interaction we have with anyone. And what David says is that there are 5 particular things that we all look for: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So here's the way this works. The brain is built on 3 central ideas. First of all, it treats social threats and rewards with the same intensity as physical threats and rewards. I'm going to say that again. This is really important. That the brain treats social threats and rewards. That means dynamics in a meeting. That means discussions with peers, discussions with bosses, feedback, performance appraisals, any kind of social interaction. The brain treats those threats the same way with the same intensity that it treats physical threats. Deborah, yes, slides are going to come out. Promise, slides will come out. Thanks for asking, by the way. The way David writes this is he says that if we are being chased by a tiger and we're running for our lives, the circuitry in the brain is the same circuitry that fires if I am getting a performance evaluation that is negative or critical. It's the same circuitry that fires if I'm in a meeting with colleagues and my boss picks on me and says, yeah, Patrick, you've been promising those reports and I haven't seen them, don't know what you've been doing over there, but and then I feel embarrassed. My brain shuts down and goes into a defensive mode. And we've all done this. We've all been in this situation. And what do? Physically, we probably kind of look down. Maybe we back away in our chairs. We stop talking. Maybe we cross our arms. Maybe we grit our teeth. Maybe we get up and leave the room. Maybe we send an email that we shouldn't send. But we react. But the circuitry is the same as if your life is physically in danger. That's pretty powerful. And that should tell us that the importance of feedback and conversation among each other has not life-threatening, but certainly threatening kind of possibilities. The other thing that this talks about, or that David talks about, is that the capacity for us to make decisions and solve problems and collaborate is greatly reduced when we are in the threat mode. So if I'm feeling threatened, I'm not likely to collaborate. Certainly not willing to ask questions, not willing to take any risks. I'm in protective mode. So we definitely want to avoid that. The other thing that this model suggests is that the threat response is more intense. It's more intense. So this means that whenever we are in social interactions, we have to recognize the importance of what this does to other people. I use this model when I talk to other professors on campus because they carry a certain amount of status and they also carry a certain amount of threat over graduate students and doctoral students and executive students, undergrads, because we have your grades in our hands. So we can make your life miserable, right? So there's already a fear there from a student perspective. And what David suggests is that what we have to do when we interact with others, and what I'm proposing to you all today, is that what we have to do when we're evaluating, when we're doing performance evaluations, when we're doing feedback in any way, formal or informal, we have to remember that everybody needs a sense of status. Everybody needs certainty. Everybody needs autonomy. Everybody needs relatedness. Everybody needs fairness, which means that I have to nurture those concepts in your heart, in your soul, in your mind. I have to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to give you a sense, a positive sense of those 5 components. That's important. When you have that, you are far more likely to react to me in a positive way, in a constructive way, which leads to better relationships, more trust, mission accomplishment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let me share just a little bit about what each of these mean. So status, we all have a sense of status. We all want a sense of status. And status is basically all about the relative perceived social importance of members of a group. Everybody wants to feel important. It doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter what you do. Everybody wants to feel important. If we don't feel that we have some level of status, I'm not talking about ego. I'm talking about that we feel useful, that we feel that we are bringing something to the table. We tend to feel less valued if we don't feel that we have a sense of status, which means if we're less valued, we feel less safe. If we're less safe, we're more at risk of social threats, right, to our status, which means that we are likely to shut down. We're likely to not react in a way that we would want to react. And you can still maintain your sense of status, even if you're on the receiving end of a performance review that suggests that you have work to do. We always do. All of us have something we have to improve on, right? So it's not necessarily that the status is important, but it doesn't mean that we can't provide good, strong feedback. We can. What I would want to do is I'd want us to listen, this is how valuable you are. This is what you do that really matters and makes us work. Here are some areas where if you could do better or more, and we're going to do some training and some development, then it would be even better, right? I mean, so but make sure that we maintain everybody's sense of status. This is really, really crucial. Treating people with simple respect is a good example. Making sure that we ask for feedback from everyone, the people that work for us. How am I doing? One of the things that I do in my office is I actually do a little mini 360 every now and then, where I'll slide a little 360 under everybody's desk or put them in their offices or whatever. And these are the 3 questions that are on there. 3 questions are this: I love it when Patrick blanks. I wish Patrick would blank. It would help me if Patrick could blank. Those are my 3 things. I love it when Patrick blanks. I wish Patrick would blank. It would help me if Patrick blanks. Those are the 3 things that I write, and I have them provide, not signed, and then have them give that back to me, because I need to know from the team, and I hope they'll tell me who they are, but they don't have to. I need that feedback. I need it badly. And I do this with my students as well. I'm like, I'm working for you. And if I'm your boss, if I'm your supervisor, I'm working for you. It's my job to support and steward you. It's not the other way around. So I need you to tell me, what can I do better to support you? I mean, this is a very low key, easy way to do it. There's not a lot of ego involved. It's private. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm kind of sidetracked. So let's go off. So status is the first one. Certainty is the next one. So certainty, all of us need a degree of certainty. Even those of us who would claim, oh no, I'm crazy and wild and I'm always doing different things and so forth. The certainty. This is important. Neurologically, we all need a sense of certainty, which means that we need a sense of the future. Now, the cop-out on the supervisor side is, we have no idea what's going to happen. How do I know? That's okay. But generally, there's something we can say. Look, these are the possibilities as I see it. I don't know where we're going to go, but I think based on what we're seeing, talking to the bosses, these are some of the paths that we might end up taking, and we need to be prepared. Let's talk about how we're prepared for those options. That gives me a sense of certainty. I may not know the ultimate answer, but I'm informed. One of the very biggest problems with organizational change efforts is that we don't tell people enough. We get all the senior people together and we put a big strategic plan and we put it together, and we never really inform everybody about what's going on, or more importantly, why. We just do it. And then we wonder at the end of a strategic change effort, which most of them fail anyway. We wonder at the end, well, why did it work? Well, because, we didn't nurture. We didn't take care of the people's questions. We don't always have to have the answers, but we have to recognize that people need this sense of certainty. The next one, so certainty, autonomy. Once again, this is an easy one to remember because it says SCARF, right? So that's what, burn that into your brain and think about this when we're approaching folks for feedback or just general conversation. So in terms of autonomy, this is another one. I used to be a professor at a medical school, and one of the things I would always tell my doctor students is I would say, look, your patients need to have some sense of autonomy. I mean, they want to know that they have some sense of decision in the choices that they make about their bodies. You got to give them that. You got to give them the chance to make those choices. And so It's the same way in the workplace. I mean, we need to be able to give people a sense of some control. I mean, we may not have a lot, but there's always some. It's up to us as the leaders to find where those are and help bring people together to talk about what those particular decisions may be. If I can't influence my own situation, no matter where I sit in the organization, I'm going to feel hopeless. If I feel hopeless, fear takes over. If fear takes over, what do? It's a threat. I move to the left. I start to shut down. I go into protection mode. And this, everyone, is very common currently. I think of all the ones, this one's pretty common because of the remote work thing. And this has created some challenges for us to be able to give people a sense of autonomy. I wrote an article not long ago, actually I wrote an article several years ago saying, get over it. We need to be thinking about remote work more often. I mean, there's certainly stuff that's important to do in person, absolutely. But the idea that every single person has to get on the metro at Shady Grove and come into downtown DC every day is just stupid. It's not needed. It's just not needed. Not every day, maybe a couple days a week. I don't know. It depends on the organization. But by and large, we can save the environment. We can give people a better quality of life. And this gives them some sense of autonomy. And some of this has been difficult as we've moved to a hybrid workplace because managers, how do I know they're getting work done? Well, how do you know they're getting work done when you're on the 12th floor and they're on the 4th floor tucked into a cubicle? Well, because they're here. How do you know they're here? You're on the 12th floor and they're on the 4th floor stuck in a cubicle. I've had this conversation with so many senior leaders. I better not try to get a job in government. So relatedness, this is the R in the SCARF model. And this is the fourth factor. This is simply our sense of safety. You know, the diversity and inclusion, equity, accessibility orders that came out from the Biden administration, I think are wonderful. The people that work in that field will tell you that the current administration is asking for an awful lot to be done. And there's an awful lot to undo from the previous administration. A lot of the support mechanisms and funding for those initiatives were changed. Just the nature of the political system that we live and work in. But this is that sense of connectedness, everyone. This is that sense of I belong here, no matter what I look like, no matter what I call myself, no matter how I identify. This is my sense of safety. This is so crucial. But it's also my sense of being, do I belong? Am I part of the in-group? Am I part of the decision-making? Am I included? And this is an area, you know, when we feel a sense of relatedness, that whole neuropeptide oxytocin that we've all heard about kind of kicks in, and our brains start to feel the herding mentality, and we move toward others and closer to others. Relatedness matters. We're family. We're family of humans. And we have to at least be a family of humans, which means, you know, we don't have to have intimate personal relationships with everyone we work with, but doggone, we need to have a human connection with everyone. I mean, if this pandemic hasn't taught us a thing, that nothing really matters except the human connection that we have with one another. So the last one is fairness. And I bring this especially for the supervisors on the line. And this was important because this is one that relates to our sense of equity and our sense of justice. A good example of this in the workplace is that sometimes as a supervisor, right, as a director, as a leader of a program, I've got a staff, and I need to ensure that when university opportunities come up to put people on task forces and put people working, you know, directly under the dean or under the president of the university, or under, you know, oh, by the way, our president of the university is Sylvia Burwell. She was the head of Health and Human Services, as you all probably know, and she was on Obama's cabinet. She became a president of our university 4 years ago. And I always like to say that Sylvia joined our university as the president of our university on June 1st, 2017. And I started sucking up to her on May 31st. 2017. No, she's terrific. And I can't say enough about her leadership through COVID. She has been amazing. We're very lucky to have her. I love having a Fed as our president, not some silly academic. It's great. I'm sorry, let me go back to fairness. So as a supervisor, here's where I'm thinking about fairness. As a supervisor, I'm going, well, wait a second. You know, I can assign someone on our team to work for Sylvia on this task force. My sense of fairness and equity is, well, wait a minute. How come Hakeem always gets assigned to these things? What's up with that? how come Kelsey always gets assigned? I never get, that's the sense of equity. That's the sense of fairness. When I sense that people are just in their own self-interest, that there's no connection, that creates a problem. And this, once again, will allow us to move toward that thread. So of these, I think what I'm wondering at the moment is, what about, oh, I just saw Gwen, how come Hakeem gets to take off whatever? Yeah, that's great. I didn't remember if I used Hakeem as an example before. I always pick the names of the people that work on our team whenever I use these examples. So which one do you think, so which one resonates with you all? I'm curious. I would love to just throw it there in the chat. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this. I just want to see the one that you all think probably doesn't get addressed as well, the one that's ignored the most. I see fairness there. A lot, oh boy, ooh, a lot of fairness. Wow, holy cow. Yeah, this is really good. Fairness. Oh, holy cow, those are really great. Yeah, fairness. So they're up here on the top, everyone. So status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, fairness. Those are your 5. Wow, this is overwhelming. I did not expect to see this. I'm not running the stats except in my brain right now, but I'm seeing a lot of fairness. Definitely, probably 60% of what I'm seeing here is fairness. Good. This is good to know. I mean, the feedback on this is great. I think I tend to agree. It's difficult. I mean, this is what, remember, what we're talking about here, everyone, is we're talking about the components that are necessary neurologically for me to feel safe. So Mika is going to provide for me feedback on this presentation. And Mika needs to know that I need to feel like I have a sense of status, not ego. I need to feel like I have that I have a sense of that I've contributed, or I contributed in some way. I need to know there's some certainty. These are the things I need to feel safe with so that I can accept what she is offering me in a productive and constructive way. Because the minute I feel threatened, I'm going the opposite direction. Remember, it's that fear, it's that survival, it's just the way the brain works. I am I spent many years as a high school football referee. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I knew that I had a problem emotionally, professionally, personally with taking things personally. When people would say that, I take it personally, and I would hurt, and I would feel sad that I hurt their feelings, or that I did something wrong, and or that I made a mistake, and then I would want to fix it, and I'd fixate on that negative comment. And I also happen to like football, even though, frankly, I would never let my children play. It's just too dangerous. But I did become a football referee. And the reason I did was because I wanted to know what it would be like to have mean coaches and even meaner rich parents from Northwest DC chase me to my car after a football game and yelling at me because I threw a flag on Johnny and now he's not going to get in the NFL anymore. I needed to be able to hear those things and be okay with it and be confident in what I brought to the table, be confident in my call on the field, and be able to stand up and withstand that criticism. I knew that. I had a real issue with that. This is the kind of self-awareness that will help us become better leaders, better communicators, and better with feedback. So let me move now to what it's like to give and receive, right? These are kind of the last few things I want to talk about. Oh, sorry, that slide. I should have already gone that slide. Where's my, sorry. Wait, oh, I lost my cursor. Hold on. Oh, my cursor's gone. Oh, sorry, everyone. Oh, there we go. There we go. Back up. Apologize for that. Lost the cursor for a second. So let me talk for a second about the recipient. Okay, for those of us that struggle, right, with this whole recipient thing. Oh, it's me. I'm telling you, actually, I'm terrible at both of these. I really am. I can talk about it, but I'm terrible at both of them. I'm the recipient. Vicky has called me, my dean. She's called me. She's like, I need to see you. I'm like, oh God, what's going on? Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Patrick. I just need to talk to you. What do you need to talk to me about? Why? I mean, this is my response. Look, for those of us on this side of the spectrum, you know what? Welcome it. I think one of the things that we can really bring to the table is to think about this from the standpoint of what can I do to improve? I mean, we can always be in that learning mode. If we can approach conversations with an open heart, when Zena and I did the book last year on love and laughter, she talked in some of the stuff that she wrote in the book, she talked about an open heart and needing to approach people and colleagues with an open heart. I think if we can approach it with a welcoming, what can I do to improve? Remember, think about this, the only thing that's really worse than hearing negative feedback is the negative consequences of not hearing it. The only thing worse than negative feedback are the negative consequences of not hearing it. So let's go to change of mind. And this is really what this is. So there's a Stanford professor. Her name is Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, Carol Dweck. She's a terrific researcher out at Stanford. And she talks about a couple of different mindsets. She talks about the fixed mindset. If you're in the fixed mindset category, you see your skills as constant personal traits. So that when we associate those abilities with part of our identity, then it feels like a personal attack. So we see, if we're in the fixed mindset, we see our skills as personal traits, which they aren't. Skills are not personal traits. They might be competencies, but they're not traits. But if we see them that way, if we identify with those, when we get criticism, it feels personal. Kind of makes sense, right? The growth mindset that Carol talks about is when we view our skills as malleable abilities which can be improved. When we fail, it seems it's a signal for us to try harder or to grow professionally rather than to give up. A colleague of mine, I'm going to recommend her book to you, is named Marilee Adams. Marilee Adams. And Marilee wrote a book called Change Your Question, Change Your Life. Oh, thank you, Madeline. I'm glad you know about Carol's work. How cool. So Marilee Adams wrote this book called Change Your Question, Change Your Life. And it's kind of what Carol talks about. She talks about a learner versus judger mindset. And we all are born judgers. Actually, Marilee calls us all recovering judgers, which I think that's great. We're all recovering judgers needing to learn. And this gets to the last point here about learning to adapt. It's so hard to, it's hard for us to adapt. Remember, I talked about the horizontal mind and the thinking and the neurological pathways. It's hard to break from those. We must break from those. We must, because that's the only way we become more accepting of others. It's the only way we accept diverse viewpoints. It's the only way we embrace equity and caring for everybody. We have to break away from that, which means we have to learn to adapt. So we have to recognize our responses. We have to recognize our self-management challenges, our social awareness challenges. It doesn't mean we're bad people, everybody. We're just flawed, messed up human beings running around the planet trying to survive. That's all we are. It doesn't mean we're bad. We're just human, right? So why not? Let's learn to adapt. That's how we survived as a species for a gazillion years, is that we learned to adapt. So a couple of things for that. So a couple more for the recipient. Another way to think about this, I think, is to reframe. To reframe remember I talked about the emotions. Well, if I'm a recipient, let's reframe the anger I'm feeling and think of it as, you know what, it's up to me to get the feedback I need. It's my responsibility to do this. This is a good thing, to get the feedback I need. Don't be angry. Certainly don't be angry at the person. Reframe fear by realizing that taking the initiative to learn about what you need to fix puts you in control. Think about that. This is a good statement. Hope I remember how I said that. Think about it this way. Taking the initiative to hear what you need to improve puts you in control. And when you're in control, that feeds that autonomy need we have. It feeds the predictability or the continuity need that we have, the certainty need in the SCARF model. It feeds it. So take control of it, reframe it, think more. Think about a GPS system. So a GPS system uses different satellites to gain the location of where you happen to be. Get lots of feedback. Don't depend on just your boss. Talk to your friends and colleagues. Talk to the people that, the people that you serve, your clients, your citizens. Ask them how you're doing. What could we do better that would have worked better? Once again, the more, the better. And of course, respond appropriately. This can be hard if we're in the defensive mode where we feel like we're being threatened. It can be very difficult to do. But you know what? If we just say thank you, here's a great tool. Tell me more. Tell me more. What do you mean by that? Can you give me an example? Can you help me understand? This does a few things. It inserts a pause in the conversation between you and the person giving you feedback, which allows you to calm down a little bit, right? As my Aunt Erlene would say, calm down a little bit, honey. It allows you to calm down a little bit. And it also allows the person that is giving you the feedback to reframe it or to respond or to recast it in a way that's more understandable. Time is our friend here. Time is our friend when we're the recipient. Now, enough about the recipient, because when I say these things, I am assuming that the person providing the feedback is doing it well. But what if I got to give it? Okay. What if I have to give the feedback and I don't like doing that? Like I said, everybody, I'm in both of these categories. I'm not good at receiving it. Not that great. I'm probably not that great at giving it. I have to ask Sophie about that. But, but now what if I'm looking at feedback from the other side? Now, wait a second. I gotta give. And I like this. Carla Jeffries is a professor at the University of Queensland. And she did an experiment where she asked participants to give feedback face-to-face via essay, written or anonymously. So 3 ways to provide feedback. And what she found was that the feedback giver, was much more positive when they were face-to-face and more critical when they delivered either anonymous feedback or feedback via an essay, via written feedback. Isn't that interesting? When we're face-to-face, we tend to be a little more positive about that. I'm not sure what that tells us. I think it makes sense to me, but one of the things that happened at universities around the country in the last 20 years or last 10 years or so is, you all probably remember back in the day in college, where at some point the professor would do course evaluations, they'd leave the room. Somebody in the class would volunteer to take the registration, take them to the registrar afterwards, and you get a piece of paper and you'd spend 20 minutes writing stuff down. Here's what happened nationwide when we went from handwritten to email versions to electronic versions. Faculty members at all levels, at all universities across the country, our evaluations dropped significantly, because what happened was the students they'd go home and they'd pull up the internet after a long night of drinking and complaining. Oh yeah, Professor Malone, blah. And then they would just write stuff, right? Just type everything in and lots of nasty emojis and everything. And faculty members around the country are like, wait a second, hold on. This isn't fair. This isn't what this has been for years. So we've had to figure out how to handle that. Anyway, Carla has done some really cool work with this. Here's something to remember. I've got a very dear friend that I've done a lot of diversity and inclusion work with over the years. And one of the things that Clyde said to me one time is, he said, Patrick, he said, there's hurt on both sides. Of all the diversity and inclusion things you can imagine, he said, there's hurt on both sides or on all sides. And I thought, what, that's a very soothing thought, because there's a lot of guilt on some sides, and there's anger, and there's horrible history. But for him to couch it as hurt or everywhere, I thought, wow, that's pretty powerful. Givers are afraid too. They're concerned. They struggle. Givers, if we struggle, it's probably for several reasons. One, we struggle because there's a balance between the personal and professional. And I hope that you all don't think that I am an advocate for not providing true evaluations and true performance feedback. I am an absolute advocate for that. We are morally bound to hold people accountable for their performance, which means you don't do the work, Junior, you're gone. Sorry, we're gonna free up your future. We're gonna give you lots of options because I put you on a PIP and you haven't done the job. So let me see how I can help. When I was in the private sector, we used to refer to this as counseling someone out of the firm. We counsel you out of the firm. And I know how hard this is to do in the federal government. I completely do. But if we have to do it, we have to do it. It's hard to do, but it can be done. Many times we fall back on the personal, though, as a giver of an evaluation. And that's why I think, as Carla suggested, it's always more positive. We don't want to say, hey, listen, here's where I think you could grow a bit. It's hard to do that. It's really hard. We also have, as human beings, a neurological connection with one another where I want you to maintain your own sense of self-worth. I'm not going to let you know. I don't want you to feel bad. Nobody wants that unless you're just like an evil person. I don't want you to feel bad. I want to make this a positive thing. So we're scared. So we get more personal, less professional. We're afraid of if we struggle giving feedback, it's because another reason, we are worried about an emotional reaction. I'm like, what am I going to do if they start crying? What am I going to do if someone slams their fist down on the desk? What am I going to do if they stand up and start looking at me? What am I going to do? It's hard. So, and the other thing is, as supervisors or as feedback providers, whether you're a supervisor or not, I think we're also afraid of the need to have the solution. we feel like, oh my gosh, we've got to have the solution here. So when I give this feedback, I've got to give them the answer. No, you don't. That's not your job. It's not your job to give them the answer. It's your job to give them the tools, right? The tools. Give them the support, give them the trust, give them the autonomy. That's our job. Our job is to create the environment for them to succeed, not to give them the recipe. That's not my job. I got my own recipes to worry about, right? So like sangria, just saying. So givers are afraid too. I think that's important to remember. And I think that as givers, we have to understand, first of all, we've got to take a step out of our comfort zone. And that means we have to take a little bit of a risk. Start small. Even if it's a little role playing, start with somebody that you trust, a colleague or a friend, and give them feedback and ask them to gauge you, to tell you, what your feedback has meant to them. Was it useful? Was it helpful? I had a situation just yesterday where I witnessed a situation where the feedback that was provided by the giver was very, very technical in nature. It wasn't factually incorrect. In fact, the feedback was factually completely 100% accurate, focused on policy, legitimate, bound in statute. There was nothing wrong technically with the feedback. What was wrong with the delivery of the feedback was that this person was not comfortable stepping out of their expert role and connecting with this human at a scarf level. They weren't willing to be empathetic. And I saw several folks have chimed in about empathy. They weren't willing to be empathetic. They weren't willing to be kind. They weren't willing to be gentle. You can still be firm and still be gentle. Any parents in the room? My gosh, it's what you're supposed to do, firm and gentle, right? But they didn't have the skills to couple with their amazing technical expertise. So I took away from observing this, I need to work with this individual on connecting as a human, as well as connecting on the more technical level, which we all like to do because that's the part of the brain that is more comfortable. So, I think these are things to me. And listening, one of the things I used to tell my medical students, and if any of you have read any work by Malcolm Gladwell, by the way, I saw him speak last month in Atlanta. He was just terrific, a really cool dude. And he wrote a book a number of years ago called Blink. And in this book, he talked about if physicians or caregivers, primarily physicians, would just shut up for 2 minutes when the patient comes into the room, into the clinic, and sits down in the exam room, and just say, what can I do for you today? And then don't talk for 2 minutes. I literally don't talk. And I used to tell my medical students, stop talking. And by the way, I know you're at your laptop, you've typed it, but don't do that. The patient doesn't want to see your back. They want to see your front. Turn and face the patient and ask them, what are you here for today? What can I help you with? And listen to them. Don't ask them anything. Let them talk until they're done talking. And we know statistically, and Gladwell talks about this in the book, that you're less likely to be sued for a bad clinical outcome, or even if it's not your fault, or even if it is your fault, if they know you're listening to them. So shut up and listen. All of us could take that advice. And I'm a talker, as you all can tell. So for me, it's hard to shut up, but do it for the right reason. Hey, giver, do it for the right reason. Look, commitment is the right reason. Commitment to the organization, concern for the person. Remember, I asked you to lead with the heart, open heart. Concern for the other person, a sense of responsibility. If you're a supervisor, as a leader, it's your job to build. I remember when one of our youngest daughters, we have 5 daughters, which is why I always look so tired, but one of our oldest daughter, well, they're all gone, but not gone, but they're all working. One of my oldest daughter, whatever, she got her first promotion. I said, Caitlin, you got to know this. You got promoted because you work. You got promoted, and that's great. Everyone recognizes how good you are at what you do, but the reason that you got promoted is because now they want to watch about what you do for others. It's like a job evaluation. It's not really so much about the previous work as it is about what I expect of you in the future. So what's the right reason for evaluations, for feedback? It's because we want to be able to show a sense of concern and responsibility. We want to guide and mentor and support. I mean, this is what we should be doing for anyone, whether they work for us or not. If it's just a colleague, we want to have the right reason. The wrong reasons, oh my gosh, I mean, defending something or excusing my own behavior as a boss, or if I'm just in a bad mood or to make myself seem powerful, and none of those are good reasons. So do it for the right reason. Look in the mirror, think about what you're doing. All of these things are important. Also, make it timely. This is one of the biggest challenges we have in the workforce is timely feedback. Yes, everyone's busy. Here is something that I need you all to know. None of you on this call today, none of you will be able to take your papers at the end of the day and your pen and your phone and all that. You're not going to be able to get it on your little notes and stickies and all this and line them up on your desk and get them in order. None of you are going to be able to do that and go all caught up. Now, I wish we were in person because that line always gets so much laughter. So the excuse of I don't have time doesn't fly. None of us have time, especially you all. You're in the federal government. None of you have time, right? So make it timely. Make the time for it. It is an investment that will yield benefits for weeks and weeks and weeks to come. Regular feedback, informal, make it informal. That's good. That's the best feedback. The best you know what, in my view, annual appraisals, if we're talking about that formal type of feedback, annual appraisals should be nothing more than a validation of what we've been talking about for the last year. I shouldn't give you any news at all. No new news on evaluation day. It should be everything we've been talking about. That is just a summation. Here's where we've grown. Here's what we've done. Here's what I think we could do better. That's so regular and informal. Doesn't be formal, regular, and be prepared. I mean, this is something I think where as leaders, once again, without a lot of time, So I think that we owe it to the people that we lead, the environments that we're trying to nurture, whether we be colleagues or supervisors or support, whatever it is. We owe it to everyone to be prepared, to do our due diligence, to get our ducks in order. That's our responsibility. I always tell our executives, we have a lot of people in our program that come in through SCS CDP and all that. And I always tell them, listen, it's our job to be prepared. I want you to be prepared too. I want you to read. I want you to be, but you've got my word that we're not going to walk into a classroom not having been prepared. Now, we may not be perfect in our delivery. We might do some things better next time. We might make a mistake here, there, but it won't be for lack of trying or lack of prep. Come on, we owe that to the people just out of respect. A couple of more, everyone, and then I'm going to wrap up. Ensuring privacy, that kind of goes without saying. Even informal feedback, just be conscious of privacy. Here's another one. One of the things that we want to be careful with are words like never, never, all, always, you never, you always. I mean, those are, look, anyone in a relationship with anyone knows those are problems waiting to happen. They are problems that are in search of solutions. So by all means, the action, I don't think we need to make it completely sterile, but to the degree that we can focus on actions. And let's just say I'm talking colleague to colleague and someone gives me feedback and says, Patrick, when you used that phrase or when you said this or when you did this, it made me feel this way. And that gives me, so Patrick, the thing that you did, the action, not Patrick, you are a bad person, but Patrick, the action that you took, the thing that you said, we agree you said that. Oh yeah, I said that. Okay, you said that. So here's the feeling I got when I heard those words, and I need to share this with you. It's beautiful. It's exactly what ought to happen. And then I have a chance then to explain either why I said it or the fact that what I said was ridiculously stupid and I'm so sorry. And that thank you for letting me know. And I will not let that happen again. These relationships matter, everybody. The most important, I'll say this for my last thing. So these are the kind of things. I think that good questioning, of course, and that's something. Positives are good. I mean, they're good, but let's not be crazy. I mean, positives are fine because it helps put people at ease, gives them a sense of status, but don't overdo it. Otherwise, it'll come off as completely insincere. And once again, these are things that are built over time. These are not something that you can just create in an evaluation with a person that you've only talked to once in the last 8 months, right? So remember that we can come across as very disingenuous if we try to script this too much. Having suggestions is always fine. Once again, not the answers necessarily, but it's suggestions and resources. Making sure that we allow people to share their perspective. We ask them questions and let them talk. These are all things that I think we need to think about as we provide feedback. Finally, make it a learning experience. I think that's kind of president saying, oh, I'm sorry, wait, doggone it, I went too fast. Make it a learning experience. I'm sorry, I've got one more quick video for you here, and then I've got one more comment and we'll be done. I think this is going right up to the end, but I can stick around. Here we go.
To talk about your performance. I'm not happy. Like this right now, just unprofessional. You're a visionary.
I know.
But the 3-hour naps in the middle of the day cannot continue.
I don't take naps.
You don't take naps. Okay, let's talk about your reports. Here is Bill's quarterly. This is what you give me.
That's Mommy.
Let's talk about your lunch break.
Playtime.
You know, a lot of our associates are taking working lunches to try to catch up on workload, and you're off God knows where doing God knows what. I don't think it's working out. I think we need to say goodbye.
Bye.
No, Penny, we need to part ways at this juncture. You're fired.
Please don't fire me.
I'm sorry, Penny. You're fired.
I have to support my mom and dad.
Penny, I don't want to hear about your personal life.
I'm gonna work harder.
You've said this before.
I'm gonna work smarter.
No.
Isn't that the most adorable thing you have ever seen? Sorry, I had to close with that. Oh, that was so perfect. Hey, listen, everyone, this is my last point, and I've tried to read through the chats as quickly as I can, but please, if you have a question that I haven't answered and you want to throw it back in there, please do. My last message is this. The number one factor, everybody, the number one factor in mission accomplishment in the private sector, in the public sector, the nonprofit sector, it's not design thinking. It's not strategic planning. It's not information system support. It's not offsites for senior leaders. None of those are the single most important factors in organizational success and mission accomplishment. And this is borne out by research at Microsoft and Apple and all kinds of other places, Red Cross and whatever. Number one factor, psychological safety. Why? Because psychological safety, which encompasses all these components of the SCARF model, creates the foundation and the environment for us to be able to give feedback and to be able to communicate. Psychological safety is number one. It allows for innovation and creation because we work in an environment of no fear. We work in an environment of acceptance. We work in an environment of equity and inclusion. Psychological safety. And in reality, if we can create those kinds of environments, the challenges for performance appraisals, for feedback, giver or receiver, go away. So to the degree that we can do that, I think that's our mission. So with that, I want to say thank you, Mika, Jason, thank you both again for everything getting to this point. I really appreciated all the comments, everyone. And I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to answer. These are going by so fast, Mika. It's like a stock market ticker. So if anyone would like to reach out to me personally, please, pmalone@american.edu. Just send me an email. And Mika, I think you're going to send the slides out. Is that right?
Yes, I'm going to figure out how to do that and make sure it's 508 compliant. So I need to figure that out. If you have them in PDF though, and can throw them in the chat, Patrick, that would be awesome as well. But everyone has their summer reading list, right? So we're about to end, but everyone has their summer reading list. Dr. Malone has given us a plethora of books to read so that we have feedback and we do it positively, right? Quick 360 questions. I love it when I wish my manager would. It would help me if my manager would. Keep those. Those are absolutely awesome. I love that Dr. Malone is a Cowboys fan and Peaky Blinders fan. I am a fan. There we go. Give him a round of virtual applause if you haven't already done that. And we want to wish you lots of success in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you for joining us for our last performance management session. We will be posting the link on performance management page. I put that link in the chat earlier. And for anyone who missed any of the prior sessions, there will be a survey at the conclusion of this. As soon as I hit end, you guys are going to receive it. Please provide feedback so that I can get that back to Dr. Malone as well. And we do have the FEVS employment survey that is going on right now. So please, 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 please complete that survey. So thank you, and everyone have an amazing day.
Hey, Mika, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to let you know right now, I'm actually posting this. I did not have it saved in PDF, but I just did. So let me click this and it will be right there for everyone if they want to grab it. There it is. Boom. Okay, good. It's there. So if whoever's on can still grab that. Thank you again. Great to see you, Mika.
All right. Good to see you.